In this video, I'm going to give you the full blueprint that I would use if I wanted to get shredded in 2025. I lost 50 pounds and got in the best shape of my life back in 2018, and since then I've helped hundreds of men around the world to do the same. Today we're going to cover everything from what you should be eating, how you should be training, the habits you should be practicing, and much more. There's going to be 4 parts to this video: your nutrition, your training, your habits, and your mindset. All of them are important, and you can't skip one and expect to get the result, because getting shredded is more of a lifestyle shift than anything else. But saying that, we'll start with your nutrition, because at the end of the day, abs are made in the kitchen. If you want to get shredded, we need to get you on the right path, and that starts with making sure that you're in a calorie deficit, where you're burning more calories than you're consuming, than you're eating and drinking. Now, to calculate your calorie deficit target, which is unique to you, we need to first calculate something called your maintenance calorie number, which, as the name would suggest, is the number of calories that you would want to eat if you just wanted to stay the same. That number is based on your physiology, so your age, weight, height, and sex, but also on how active your lifestyle is. So the simple equation that you can use to calculate this in the next 5 seconds is to take your body weight in pounds and multiply it by 14. That's going to give you your maintenance calorie number. If you then wanted to lose a pound of fat a week, you would simply subtract 500 from that number, and that would give you your daily calorie deficit target. And the reason that's going to help you to lose 1 pound of fat each week is because there's 3,500 calories in a pound of fat. There's 7 days in a week, so 500 multiplied by 7 is 3,500. But here's the problem. You see, that equation is pretty basic. It's pretty rudimentary. So if you want a more precise calorie deficit target, go ahead and click the link in the description that's underneath this video and use my completely free calorie calculator. But when it comes to nutrition, the maths, which we just covered, is only about 10% of it. I would say 20% of it is the science, and the other 70% is the psychology. Because we all have a lot of deep-rooted belief systems around nutrition. That's the psychology, and those need to be shattered. That's where the science helps. A good example of this is with carbs. You might think, and by the way, I wouldn't blame you if you did, that you can't eat carbs if you want to get shredded. But nothing could be further from the truth. Carbs aren't bad. Look at the Japanese as an example. They have one of the lowest obesity ratings in the world, and yet a big part of their diet is made up of rice. Now, you see, the problem that we have with carbs in the Western world is twofold. Number one is the quality of the carbs that are available to us, and number two is our relationship with them. But as long as you're getting your carbohydrates from high quality whole food sources like rice and potatoes that aren't processed or cooked in a load of oil, the science actually shows that carbs are good. And that's because glucose, which is what the carbs are broken down to, is our body's preferred source of fuel. Carbs give you that quick get up and go energy. They get you moving. The other huge benefit of carbs is that they power our brain. And yet there are people in the world who are what we call more fat adapted. They can run off something called ketones, but the science has shown that ketones will only get you about 70% of the benefit that glucose will. And this is why you'll often see people who are following the keto diet very agitated or even doe-eyed. It's because their brain has detected that they're not adequately fueled. Your brain will know when it doesn't have enough glucose to function correctly, and what it will do is increase the level of cortisol in your bloodstream, which will make you more agitated because it wants you to get up and go further to hunt for food. And like I say, as long as you're eating the high quality whole food sources of carbohydrates, with rice and potato being the 2 best examples I can think of right now, and you're within your calorie target, within your calorie deficit, you're going to continue to burn fat, and you can definitely get shredded. In fact, it's going to make it even easier for you to get shredded because you're going to have that energy, that drive to get up and do more. And if you're doing more, you're going to burn more calories. A great macronutrient split that most people can subscribe to is to get 25% of your calories from protein, 25% from fat, and the other 50% from carbohydrates. What you don't want to do is to subscribe to some crazy, extreme, low-calorie diet, because at the end of the day, you're not going to stick to that. And the other thing you want to make sure that you're doing is that your diet is omnivorous. You want to make sure that you're getting food from plants and animals. The carbs are going to fuel you, the protein is going to help to build and support the muscle mass and keep you feeling full, and your fat is going to help to protect your hormone system and your immune system. But you can't just divide your calorie target by the macronutrient percentage. So for example, let's say your calorie deficit target was 2,000. You couldn't do 2,000 divided by 0.25, which would be 25%, and eat that many grams of fat. And that's because the different macronutrients have a different gram to calorie ratio. There's 4 calories in a gram of carbs, and there's 4 calories in a gram of protein, which, by the way, way, is another reason that carbs aren't making you fat, because if they were, by that maths, protein would be equally making you as fat. But there are 9 calories in a gram of fat. Let me do an example to show you exactly how to calculate this. So let's say you use my calorie calculator and it's given you a daily calorie deficit target of 2,000. We'll keep the maths as simple as we can. So first we're going to calculate the calories for each macro. So for protein, it will be 2,000 multiplied by 0.25, which comes to 500 calories. And it's the same maths for fat. So we have another 500 calories from fat. And then because we're going to try and get 50% of our calories from carbs, we're going to multiply 2,000 by 0.5 for the 50% to get the carb number, which is going to be 1,000. Then we need to convert the calories into grams. So remember, carbs and protein both have 4 calories per gram. So we'll do 500 divided by 4 for protein, which gives us 125 grams of protein. And then for carbs, we'll do 1,000 divided by 4, which gives us 250 grams. And finally, 500 divided by 9 for fat, which comes out at 55.5. So we'll just round down and say 55 grams. So there you have it. I'd be aiming for 125 grams of protein, 250 grams of carbs, and 55 grams of fat. And I know now that if I hit that, it's going to add up to 2,000 calories a day. Your number 1 priority is to hit your calories. Number 2 is to hit your protein, because remember, protein is going to help to keep us feeling full, which is going to make it much easier to burn that fat and get shredded. And then priority number 3 is our carbs and fat. Now, how you do that is kind of up to you. As I said, I recommend that you stick as closely as you can to that macronutrient mix, with 50% coming from carbs and 25% coming from fat. But you don't need to worry if they're a little bit off, because they are somewhat interchangeable. Yes, our body prefers to run off glucose, but as I said, it can also run on ketones, and some people are just more fat adapted than others. The thing is though, eating the same number of calories every single day at first is easy, but after a while, it's going to get monotonous and it's actually going to start to work against you. So what I suggest you do is to take your daily calorie deficit target and multiply it by 7. And now what you've got is a weekly calorie budget. And you can manage this just like you do your finances. And this way, if you go over one day, it's not a disaster. As long as you make it back the next day, it's all good. What a lot of my clients do is front load low calorie days at the start of the week, when stress tends to be a little bit lower and motivation tends to be a little bit higher. But probably more importantly than that, it tends to be when the social calendar is pretty clear. And what that means is at the back end of the week, they've got high calorie days banked. So when they are a little bit more stressed, they are a little bit more tired, or they just want to go out with their friends, their family, their partner and enjoy some meals and drinks, whatever it might be, they can do that. And they're still within their budget and they're still going to lose that pound of fat. And the best part about this approach is that it's flexible, it's realistic, and it's sustainable. Okay, so that's the nutrition side of things. Now we want to talk about your training. But if you are still with me and you haven't already, now would be a great time to tap that subscribe button. Now, training might be the sexiest part, but you might also be surprised to hear that it's the least important. When it comes to your training, we want to make sure you're doing 3 things. Firstly, we want to make sure that you're training the biggest body parts multiple times per week. Secondly, we want to make sure that you're prioritizing compound movements. And thirdly, we want to make sure that you're progressively overloading. So as a minimum, I would recommend that you do 3 45-minute full body workouts per week. What you don't need to be doing is training every day or doing 2-hour sessions. In fact, honestly, I would argue for 99% of people, anything over an hour as a session is going to start having diminishing returns. And what I mean by that is that you're just not going to be able to recover properly. You're going to feel drained in your next session. You're going to start skipping sessions. Then you're less active. Then you're burning fewer calories. And yeah, it's just a slippery slope. So that's a minimum, 3 45-minute full body sessions. If you can do 4 sessions per week, I'd recommend that you do 2 upper body sessions and 2 lower body sessions. So you might structure it as upper body, lower body, rest, upper body, lower body, rest, rest, repeat like that. Or if you could do 5 sessions in a week, you might want to do push, legs, pull, rest, and then lower, upper, rest. But the point is, any of these training splits are going to work, and it's about finding something that is sustainable for you. And the point of these training splits, the reason that they're going to work and be so effective for you, is because you're training the biggest body parts multiple times per week. And then we come to compound movements. So these are the exercises that use the biggest muscles in your body. Think of things like squats, deadlifts, hip thrusts, lunges, push-ups, pull-ups, dips, chest press, lat pull-downs, shoulder press, anything like that. And not only are these going to use the biggest muscles in your body, which is going to help you to burn the most calories and make your workouts the most efficient, because The bigger the muscle, the more calories you burn, because the harder your lungs have to work to breathe in the oxygen, the harder your heart has to work to pump that oxygen to the muscle in the blood. But you're also going to see the most aesthetic difference if you do them. Because remember, if we want to get shredded, the goal isn't necessarily to build the biggest muscles. It's to burn the most calories in the most efficient way. And then that third principle I mentioned there, progressive overload, this is where we want to make sure that we're increasing the volume that we're lifting over a period of time. And as a result, this is going to force your muscles to get bigger and stronger. So as an example, let's say I can leg press 100 kilos, 10 reps, 3 sets in week 1, day 1, right? If I wanted to go in week 2 and progressively overload on my leg press, I might try and do 10 reps for 3 sets, but I might do 120 kg. And my total volume, which is the number of reps I've done multiplied by the number of sets, multiplied by the weight that I've lifted, has gone up. As a result, I have gotten stronger and my muscles have had to adapt. One of the biggest mistakes that I see a lot of guys make when it comes to the gym and their workouts and their training is that they're adding in too much exercise variety. You know, one day they're doing HIIT, the next minute they're doing strongman, and then they're doing powerlifting, then they're doing hypertrophy. You want to stick to a plan for 6 to 10 weeks, I would say. See these exercises as skills. The more that you practice them, the better you're going to get at them. And also, you want to see it a little bit like your diet. The biggest mistake people make with their diet is that they yo-yo from one extreme to the other. So why would you do that with your exercise? So you want to build yourself a structured training program or sign up to a coach who will give you one and then follow it. Sneaky link to find out more about mine in the description underneath this video. One of the biggest benefits that my clients tell me that they get from my coaching program is the structure and the routine. They aren't guessing. They're not having to make it up in their head. They've got a plan. They know if they follow it, they're going to get the results. Final thing on exercise, you do not need to do cardio. I actually did an experiment to prove this because when I lost the 50 pounds, I barely did any cardio, but no one would believe me. So what I did was I strapped my Apple Watch to my wrist. Unfortunately, the Apple Watch has since deceased. And I found a route near to my house here in Spain. So what I did is I walked. It was a 3-kilometer route. I walked it and then I recorded that and then I turned around and I ran back home the same route. And what I'll do right now is I'll put the 2 results on the screen next to each other. So you can see the calories from the walk on the left-hand side, hopefully I got that right, and the calories from the run on the right-hand side. And you can see the difference between the walk and the run is only 14 calories. I think about it this way, which of those 2 is going to be more sustainable? Which are you going to be more motivated to do more often? And which of them is less likely to get you injured? All 3, the answer is the walking. And that leads us very nicely into talking about the habits that you need to get shredded. And the first habit, you might have guessed it, is walking. The best example, the best story I can give you around this is a client of mine who I worked with earlier this year called Paul, who I will put up on the screen here. He lost 30 pounds in just 12 weeks on my coaching program. And yeah, he was in this calorie deficit, of course, so he was burning the fat. And yeah, he was working out from home 2, maybe 3 times a week. But the most of his result came from the fact that he was doing 15 to 18,000 steps per day. Now listen, you don't need to do that, but it's a great example of just how powerful your step count can be. And remember what I said right at the beginning of this video, getting shredded is much more of a lifestyle shift than anything else. What you do outside of the gym is going to count a lot more than what you do in it. It might get you going a little bit to picture yourself in your own little Rocky cutscene and think you have to be walking up hills in the snow with logs on your back or doing 1,000 sit-ups a day. But in all honesty, the reason most people fail with this stuff, the reason most people never get shredded, and when I say most people, I think there's only 2% of Americans who have visible six-packs, and it's something like 8% or maybe even 10% now who are millionaires. That's how rare it is. That's how hard it is. It's because it's boring. It's because it's monotonous. It's because it's not particularly exciting. But like I say, you don't have to be walking 15, 18,000 steps a day. But what you do want to be doing is more than the average. And the average in the US and the UK is just 3,000 steps a day. If you can walk 8,000 steps per day, that's only going to take you about an hour, just over. I think it's 64 minutes if you really want to be precise. And that's because it's going to take you 8 minutes to do 1,000 steps. So we do 8 times 8 is going to be 64, which really isn't that much, particularly if you plan it in, because when it comes to your walking, the best part about it is that you can multitask. So you can listen to a playlist, an audiobook, a podcast, you can phone your friend, or you can even switch all your Zoom meetings to walking meetings. And the other great thing about walking is that you get to go outside, you get some fresh air, and Heck, maybe even some sunlight. It allows you to change your perspective and change your environment, which is very important because a lot of people these days are chained to their desks, sitting down for 8, maybe even 12 hours of their day. And as a result, their environment becomes quite toxic, becomes quite negative. It's important to mix that up. And if you get outside, if you get some fresh air, that's going to activate something called your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the part of your nervous system which is linked with rest, relaxation, and recovery. What that's going to do is it's going to lower your cortisol level. It's going to lower your stress level. So you're going to feel less hungry. You're going to sleep better. You're going to have fewer mood swings, and life is just going to be a lot easier. And all you have to do is walk for an hour a day. And here's where it gets even cooler. You might be thinking, why have you said 8,000 steps a day? Well, that's because I know that most people are doing 2,000 steps on autopilot, whether it's chasing after their kids, commuting to work, doing the grocery shop, or whatever else it might be. So if you consciously walk 8,000 a day and subconsciously on autopilot do 2,000 a day, now you're doing 10,000. And here's where the magic happens. If you do 10,000 steps a day consistently, you're going to burn at least an extra 300 calories. It might be even more than that because the number of calories that you burn is always going to be dependent by your size, your physiology. If you're a man, sorry ladies, you are going to burn more calories, and it's going to depend on how fast you're walking. So if you're a big dude and you're walking at a brisk pace, you could easily burn 500 extra calories a day just by walking. So walking is habit number one, which is going to help you to directly burn more calories. But as I said, it's also going to help you to reduce your stress level. And that really is the point of the other habits that I want to talk you through today. Because if you really want to get shredded, you're going to need more than willpower and more than motivation. You're going to need to find some inner peace. Walking is what we call a high leverage habit because doing one thing gives you many benefits. And the other habit, which does the same thing, is sleep. Again, not particularly exciting, but so important if you're serious about getting shredded. Not only is sleep when our brain and our body is in recovery mode, but it's also when all of our hormones are being brought back into balance. And again, one of the most important ones here is your cortisol, your stress hormone. If you are badly slept, I mean, I don't even need to tell you, you know what it's like. If you've had several bad night sleeps in a row, your willpower, your motivation, everything has gone out the window. You are just on pure survival mode. The other two hormones that are greatly influenced by your sleep are your leptin and your ghrelin, which are your hunger hormones. You want your leptin to be nice and high. This is your satiety hormone. It dictates how full you feel. And you want your ghrelin to be nice and low. This is your hunger hormone. Now, bad sleep is going to knock these hormones way out of balance. You're going to feel hungry and you're never going to feel full. This is where cravings kick in, and this is where you eat food that you wouldn't normally. And of course, sleep is going to give your body a chance to recover. So you're going to get up, you're going to have more energy, you're going to have more drive. And if you've got those two things, you're going to do more. And if you do more, you're going to burn more calories. I used to think that sleep, movement, and nutrition were three equal parts when it came to our health. But the older I've gotten, the wiser I've gotten, the more people that I've helped and the better results I've helped them get, the more I've realized that sleep is actually the foundation of a pyramid with nutrition and movement sitting above it. Because if you haven't got your sleep in check, if you're not focused on it, nothing else will click. But here's the thing, I think too much emphasis is put on the quantity of sleep. Everybody says sleep 7 to 9 hours, but let's be real, sleeping 9 hours is a pipe dream, particularly if you've got a busy job, or dare I even say it, kids. So what I have found to work far more effectively for me is to focus on the quality of my sleep. And you can do this very simply with 4 things. You want to make your room as cold, dark, quiet, and well ventilated as possible. So the 3 things that you can go on Amazon right now and buy, which aren't going to break the bank, but are going to make a huge difference, are some earplugs, a blackout blind, and a fan. That's going to cool your room down, make it darker, and of course the earplugs are going to block out any noise which might wake you up in the night. So that's your sleep environment. The other thing that we can do to improve the quality of your sleep is make sure that you're getting deeper sleep. And the best way to do that is implement something called the 3-2-1 rule, where you stop eating 3 hours before you go to sleep, you stop drinking 2 hours before you go to sleep, and you come off all your screens, whether it's laptops, phones, or TVs, an hour before you go to sleep. And that's because eating is a very metabolic process. Any metabolic process will raise your heart rate. And as you probably know, if you want to get good, deep sleep, you want your heart rate to be at a resting level. So we need to give our body time to process and digest the food. Drinking water, alcohol, sodas, whatever it might be before bed, you're increasing your likelihood of waking up in the night. I have really found this ever since I got older than 35. And obviously, if we spend time on our phones, on our screens, on our TV, whatever it might be before bed, that's going to expose us to a lot of blue light, and the blue light prevents the production of our sleep hormone, which is called melatonin. So if you combine improving your sleep environment with the 3-2-1 rule, you're far more likely to get a higher quality of sleep. And as a result, you're only going to need to get 7 hours for the magic to happen. So that's two very high leverage habits we've talked about there, walking and sleeping. The third high leverage habit is all around this stuff, drinking more water. Because if I hadn't have just told you what it was, but I told you that there was a simple daily habit which would improve your energy levels, make it easier to stick to your calories, give you more drive, and improve your mood even, but you didn't have to do any crazy routines, take any pills or anything like that, and it was free, you probably think it's too good to be true, but that's exactly what drinking more water does. There's three things that we do from the day we're born to the day we die: breathing, sleeping, and you guessed it, drinking water. Now, breathing, we do subconsciously, we take having fresh oxygen for granted. Sleeping, we've just talked about. Drinking more water, we all know it's important. I'm not the first guy in the world to tell you, oh, you should drink more water. But so few people consciously focus on it. And I think that's because they've never been told the value of it, why it helps them so much, how it helps them to not only live a healthier life, but also to get shredded. So that's exactly what I want to do now. I want you to see water a little bit like your backup energy source. So think of the calories like the petrol that you would put in your car to get it started, to get it moving. But think of the water as the oil that you put in the car to stop it from breaking down. Every single cell in your body requires water to function correctly. And most people don't realize that it only takes you to be 1 to 2% dehydrated for the most negative side effect to kick in. And that's you're going to start to feel lethargic. And when you feel lethargic, suddenly the idea of lying on the sofa all day, binge watching Netflix feels very appealing. But as a result, you're going to do less. And what happens when you do less? You burn fewer calories. And that's going to make it a heck of a lot harder to get shredded. So water in its own weird little way gives you more energy, gives you more drive. It helps you to get up and go. But it's also going to give you less brain fog, and it's going to make it easier to stick to your calories because it fills your stomach. And when your stomach gets full, it sends a signal all the way up to your brain telling your brain that you are full. So if you struggle to drink water, just do what I do. Always have a bottle in the corner of your desk. You couldn't see this bottle before I brought it to your attention, but it's in my periphery vision. And if it's in my periphery vision, every 5 minutes when I stop recording, I'm going to have a little swig of water. It's going to keep me hydrated. It's going to keep me focused. The problem is if I was to put the water down here, sure, it's still next to me, but it's not in my periphery vision. Suddenly, I'm not thinking about it. And when I'm not thinking about it, I could go hours without having a sip. If that's not enough motivation for you to drink more water, then I encourage you to invest in a water bottle. Because if you invest in a $10, $20 water bottle, I'm not talking about anything fancy like these $100, $200 water bottles you see these days, just 10 to 20 bucks. If you invest in it, you're going to be more psychologically invested in the habit. And as a result, your brain is going to nag you. It's like, you spent that money, you might as well do the damn habit. So there you have it, drink more water. Now, the fourth and final habit that I want to talk you through is probably the most abstract and almost definitely the one that I think people are going to struggle with the most, but it may end up being the one that's going to make the most difference for you. And that is to spend time with people who are already shredded or on the path to getting shredded. Listen, I'm not saying that you have to disown your friends and your family, but the chances are that if you're not in the shape you want to be in, a large part of that is because of your environment, and a big part of your environment is the people who are in it. If you're sharing an environment, whether that's your family home, your office, your friend group, wherever it might be, and none of them are going to the gym, all of them are out of shape, none of them even care about any of the stuff we're talking about today, you're not going to rise to the level of your goal, you're going to fall to the level of your surroundings. Whereas if you were to start going to the gym more regularly, I don't know, join a running club or hanging out with colleagues who are into their fitness, I mean, even watching YouTube videos like this, you're far more likely to start transforming into that shredded person. Because remember, and I've said it 2 or 3 times now, but it's so important, getting shredded is more of a lifestyle choice than anything else. It doesn't mean you have to be on some crazy low-calorie restrictive diet. It certainly doesn't mean that you have to be in the gym every single day. But it does mean that you're going to have to make some conscious choices. It does mean that you're going to have to make some sacrifices. And that actually nicely leads us on to the fourth part of this video, which is your mindset. Your mindset is what's going to allow you to take all the information that I've given you today about your diet, your training, and your habits, and to actually put it into practice, because you could easily become another one of those people who watches all these YouTube videos and learns everything and knows everything and then starts debating people in the comments, but doesn't actually do anything about it and sits behind an anonymous profile. Or you could get yourself into the right mindset, implement it, and actually get shredded. So when it comes to your mindset, the first thing that you're going to need is a burning desire. There's a very famous quote by a guy called Napoleon Hill, who wrote a very famous book called Think and Grow Rich, which says that the only thing a man needs to succeed is to have a burning desire. And by the way, ladies, it is his quote, not mine, so don't attack me. But this is so important. So many people skip over this part. They jump straight into the calorie deficit. They ignore all the advice I've given them, and they go to the gym every single day. And then 2 weeks later, they come to me and say, why hasn't it worked? Because you need to be thinking in weeks and months, not in days. Listen, I am here to be honest with you. I like to think it's one of the few things that makes me a little bit different from all the other YouTubers out there. And at the beginning, this will be new, it will be fresh, it will be exciting. But after a few weeks, maybe a couple of months, if you're lucky, it will get a little bit boring and it will get a little bit monotonous. But this is what separates the boys from the men, because the men, the winners, are the ones who do it no matter how they feel. And this is why it's so important to not be relying on motivation and willpower alone. This is where that burning desire comes in, having a deep-rooted, intrinsic reason, a real why as to why you're doing this. You also really need to understand and appreciate the value of something called compound interest. Now, you might have heard of this from a financial point of view, which is essentially where interest gets interest on interest and it goes from there. It's exactly the same when it comes to your body and when it comes to your mind. The more diligent and disciplined and consistent that you are with this, and the longer that you can sustain it, which again is why that burning desire is so important, because if you're relying on motivation and willpower, you're just going to give up in days rather than weeks or months, the better the result that you're going to get. I'm going to put 2 photos on the screen right now. These photos are only like 2 weeks apart. You can see the date stamps on them. They're from 2018 when I lost those 50 pounds. Now, these 2 photos are only 2 weeks apart, right? But they look like they might be 2 months apart. Even though I'm only about 2 pounds difference in terms of my weight between these 2 photos, it looks like I've lost 10. This is my brain, this is my body, the universe, I don't even know, rewarding me for all the hard work, diligence, discipline, and consistency that I put in over the course of 4 months. Almost all the results came in the final 2 weeks. And this is why it's so important to see this as a lifestyle shift rather than just another health kick. Because really, what's the goal here? To get shredded, to get abs for one day, just to say you did it, take a photo on Instagram and go thumbs up? No. You want to be healthier. You want to be happier. Maybe you want to improve your confidence, your energy levels, your drive. Maybe you want to be a better father, husband, partner. I don't know. It doesn't really matter, but you need to know what your deep-rooted intrinsic reason, driver, why for doing all this is. And remember what I said, only 2% of Americans have got visible six-pack abs, while 9 or even 10% are millionaires. That gives you an idea of how hard this is going to be. I'm not telling you this to put you off. I'm telling you this so that when it does start to feel a bit of a challenge, you know what to expect. You know to keep pushing through. This is going to require some sacrifice. This is going to require change, and you're going to need to learn to say no. And I'll leave you with this. The trajectory that you're on is far more important than the speed that you're going at. Because you could be going 100 miles per hour in the wrong direction, or you'll be going 100 miles per hour in the right direction, but with the wrong tires on. And what's going to happen? You're going to crash and you're going to burn. So we want to build this over a period of time. Add small habits and little small wins in each day and each week. There's a brilliant Japanese philosophy called Kaizen, which is the idea that you aim to be 1% better every day. Embody that. Live by that. Don't try to be perfect at the beginning, because that would be irrational to expect that you could do that. It's a humbling process, but it's one that we all have to go through if we want to get shredded. I really hope you enjoyed this video, but more importantly, I hope you found it useful. I'm going to leave links to the calorie calculator and to find out more about my coaching program in the description that is underneath this video. And YouTube is going to serve you another one of my videos right here. Now, I have no idea which video is going to show you, but YouTube is a pretty smart cookie. So if you've enjoyed this video, the chances are you're going to enjoy this one. So you might want to go ahead and watch that next. Until next time, cheers.